The sun rises slowly over the Aegean Sea, casting long shadows across the ruins of a once great civilization. A breeze stirs the ancient olive trees that have stood watch for millennia, as if holding secrets in their gnarled branches. The land beneath our feet, though worn by time, remains steadfast, just like the people who have called it home for over 3,000 years. But what if I told you the Greeks, the people we know today, with their olive skin, their deep connection to philosophy, art, and democracy, might not be exactly who we think they are? What if I told you that the Greeks of today might be far more complex than the descendants of Socrates, Plato, and Alexander the Great? The ones we imagine, walking the streets of modern Athens, are not a direct line stretching from the ancient past to the present. No, DNA, the very blueprint of our existence, tells a different story, one far more intricate and unexpected. Scientists have peeled back layers of time, unraveling mysteries hidden in bones, ancient tombs, and, most surprisingly, in the strands of our genetic code. And what they found is shocking. Not only are the people of modern Greece connected to their ancient ancestors, but the path between then and now is full of startling surprises. Stay with me. By the end of this journey, you'll see Greek identity through a completely new lens. The story begins over 3,000 years ago, before the golden age of democracy, before the rise of Athens as the heart of Western civilization. Long before the philosophers, the generals, and the gods, there was a civilization on an island in the heart of the Mediterranean, Crete. Here, the Minoans thrived. They were one of Europe's first advanced cultures, building grand palaces, creating intricate art, and establishing trade routes that spanned the Mediterranean. But the Minoans weren't the only early Greeks. On the mainland, another great civilization was rising, the Mycenaeans. They were warriors, kings, and the heroes of Homer's epic tales, stories of Troy, of Achilles, of Odysseus. They built mighty citadels, launched ships, and fought wars that would echo through the ages. But it is here, at this ancient crossroads of civilization, that science begins to reveal something astonishing. When geneticists began studying the DNA of ancient Greeks, they uncovered a story they weren't expecting. The Mycenaeans, long thought to be the purest ancestors of the Greeks, were not purely Greek at all. Instead, the majority of their genetic material, nearly 80%, came from an unexpected source. It traced back to early farmers who crossed from Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, thousands of years earlier, bringing with them the seeds of agriculture, the domestication of goats, and the beginnings of settled life. But there was more. Around 15 to 20% of the Mycenaean DNA came from an even more surprising place: the vast Eurasian steppe, the sprawling grasslands that stretch from Eastern Europe to Central Asia. Imagine that. Horseback nomads from the east moving across the plains with their animals and wagons, carrying with them not only their tools, but also something much more powerful: the language that would eventually evolve into the Greek language. Without these steppe nomads, the language of Homer, of Plato, of the New Testament might never have existed. And the story doesn't end there. Fast forward thousands of years, and the DNA story becomes even more intriguing. Scientists comparing Mycenaean DNA with the makeup of modern Greeks found something incredible. The connection was startlingly close. Despite centuries of invasions, wars, and the rise and fall of empires, the Greeks of today are still genetically closest to their Mycenaean ancestors. That's right. If you were to stand side by side with a Mycenaean warrior, you'd find that you share a part of your DNA. You are family. This revelation is nothing short of astonishing, because it challenges everything we thought we knew about the continuity of human history. Greece, as we know, has always been a crossroads. It sits at the intersection of Europe, Asia, and Africa. And throughout history, it has been a melting pot of cultures, Traders, settlers, invaders, they all flowed in and out of Greece, bringing with them new ideas, new technologies, and inevitably, new genes. The sea wasn't a barrier, it was a highway. And it's no surprise that modern Greeks carry traces of ancestry from places as distant as North Africa and the Near East. It's easy to imagine Athens as a city of philosophers with its olive trees and open-air debates. But Athens was also a bustling port, a meeting point for merchants and travelers from across the Mediterranean. It was a city where cultures blended, where the ideas and people of the world intersected. But here's the real question. Does this mixing of cultures make Greeks less Greek? Or does it reveal something deeper about what it means to be Greek? Perhaps it's not about being isolated, about holding tightly to one unchanging identity, but about embracing the world while remaining rooted in something essential. To understand this, we must look forward to the time of the Byzantine Empire, when the Greek-speaking world was not only surviving, but thriving. After the fall of Rome, the Byzantines carried the legacy of Greece forward, with Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, becoming the center of one of the most powerful empires in history. Yet even as the Byzantines fought wars against Persians, Arabs, and later Crusaders, one thing remained constant: their genetic makeup. Scientists who've studied DNA from this era have found that, despite the centuries of conflict, the genetic core of the Greek people remained remarkably stable. The Mycenaean bloodline persisted, surviving waves of invasions and changes, preserving itself in the very DNA of the Greeks. But the most surprising revelation comes when we look at the invasions that came much later. The Slavic migrations in the Middle Ages, the Ottoman Empire's long reign, they all left their mark on Greece and on Greek DNA. The assumption is often that these invasions wiped out or replaced the original Greek population, that they destroyed the identity of the people. But that's not what the science shows.
Yes, there are small traces of Slavic and Turkish ancestry in modern Greeks, but the core of Greek DNA, the Mycenaean foundation, remains. In fact, modern Greeks are closer to their ancient ancestors than modern Italians are to the Romans. Let that sink in. Despite the dominance of empires, despite centuries of foreign rule, the Greek people, genetically speaking, have remained remarkably consistent. The Greeks weren't wiped out by invasions, they survived them, and through each wave of change, they adapted and thrived. Their identity wasn't erased, it was strengthened. In this way, the genetic history of the Greeks isn't one of purity. It's a story of resilience. It's about survival, about holding on to something ancient, something essential, while adapting to the world around them. If you could look at the DNA of a modern Greek, you would see a mosaic, a picture made up of many small pieces. There are the farmers from Anatolia, the nomads of the Eurasian steppe, the Byzantine citizens, the survivors of Ottoman rule. Each group contributed to the portrait, but at the center, holding everything together, is the Mycenaean bloodline. This, then, is what makes Greek DNA so extraordinary. It's not just one story, it's a collection of stories. Stories from ancient farmers, from steppe horsemen, from traders and conquerors, from survivors of empires. Each wave of history added a layer, but through it all, the core, the essence of the Greek people, remained. The ultimate question, then, is this: are modern Greeks the same people as those of Homer, Aristotle, and Alexander? The science says yes. Modern Greeks are deeply tied to those ancient ancestors, but they are also the children of centuries of history, of empires, of traders, of neighbors. And maybe that's the real secret. To be Greek is not about remaining unchanged. It's about holding on to identity while embracing the world around them. DNA is only part of the story. Culture plays a vital role as well. The Greek language, the Orthodox faith, and the myths and traditions that have been passed down through generations, these are the ties that bind the Greek people together. Through all the ups and downs of history, the culture has remained as steadfast as the DNA. The Greek people didn't just survive, they thrived, passing down their memory, their traditions, and their bloodline through every generation. So when you look at a Greek person today, you're not just seeing someone who shares a common language or culture. You're seeing someone whose DNA links them directly to the builders of the Minoan palaces, the warriors of Troy, the thinkers of Athens. That's not just history, that's blood, that's family. And that's why the story of Greek DNA is one of the most extraordinary in the world. So what does this reveal to us? Not just about the Greeks, but about all of human history. Science tells us that it's not about purity, it's about resilience, it's about survival, it's about the endurance of identity through time, through change, through everything. And this, perhaps, is the deepest truth DNA can reveal. The story of humanity is not just one of bloodlines. It's the story of how, against all odds, we endure. If you're Greek today, your DNA tells the story of over 3,000 years of history, of survival, of adaptation. It tells the story of a people who refused to be erased, who held on to their identity even as they absorbed the influences of the neighbors.